Hi, my name is Avi Freedman. I guess I had introduced myself to some of the folks in the room. For the folks on the camera, I come from a networking background, ISP days, some of the first delivering boxes to the edge of the network for overlay networking. Have a company called Kentik. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about it. I know this is in some sense our time, but it also should be your time. So heckling is, I know some people are mic'd up for that. So feel free to interrupt, ask questions. I'll give you a little bit of background on the company, what kind of customers we work with, what we've built, and then go into a couple demos, and then have plenty of time for QA. So Kentik, we're a 2.5-year-old company. We started with the thesis that if you ask most of our customers what we do, they'd say we solve the NetFlow problem. And if you ask them what's the NetFlow problem, they'd say, well, that I don't have a good answer for my NetFlow problem. It's double-click on the SNMP, see what's going on the infrastructure. A lot of it's DDoS, detection, availability, performance, and even a little bit of security. Although we decided to take a much more operator-focused start. So I moved out to the Bay Area in January of 2014. Started the company with a couple friends from Cloudflare. If you've heard of them, they have a great blog in marketing. And we decided that after talking to a lot of operators that were struggling with this analytics, that we were going to take a slightly different approach. Instead of software or appliances or even do it yourself on big data, we were going to take a SaaS approach, software as a service. So we built a platform with a data engine I'll tell you about that takes streaming analytics from the infrastructure. And then we run that on infrastructure we make, because we're old server huggers in Equinix. Or on-prem for people that want that. So most of the data we take is NetFlow, IPFix, SFlow with augments. So we work with nprobe and can take IPFix, latency and semantics, Cisco AVC, things like that. We're here at Interop looking for food where we can get more than just the standard flow. We have a host agent and we can do some sensor stuff. Some of that's roadmap, and I'll tell you about that. And we're about 30 people. Most of our customers are web companies, SaaS companies, service providers today, and we're growing into the classic enterprise. So the history actually started with I was building sensors. And everybody that was deploying the PCAP sensors and generating NetFlow and running Snort, P0OF, and all that stuff said, what do we do with all this flow? And so I said, is that still a problem? Right? I mean, VXR is 1996. We have flow coming out. And of course, the computers were not as good then at taking all that. But we talked to all the operators, and they said they had the same problems. And not only that, but that the same data that comes out as metadata about the traffic should be usable for multiple purposes. Right? So the big data idea, not just is the link full and am I being attacked, but also is it a misconfig, or who am I talking to via API, or what's the application versus network performance. And right now, if you look at the software or even appliance vendors, you've got Arbor, right, which is the basic analytics. You've got Langcope, which is the same thing, but for security. You've got NetScout and all the extra hops, Sev1, all the MPMD. But it's the same data, right? It's just used for different things. And so we had a thesis that if we can get all that data, put it in one place, make it accessible, we could actually do multiple use cases for it. And I'll show you, we're nascent in some of them, but I'll show you some of the things that we're doing. And I'll tell you, we've seen a lot of companies, a lot of LinkedIn scale companies that have said, okay, well, we need to solve this because the vendors aren't doing it. And it's a really hard problem to solve. It's not that it's impossible, it's just that there's a lot of icky little features. How do you take the BGP and join it with flow and compare it to SNMP and have an API and all that stuff? And we really, again, had this view that even though we're starting with simple NetFlow, IPFix, SFlow, let's make it extensible and let's let it be used for multiple things. And so if you ask people, who here runs flow analytics? I know you're operator. Okay, so, is there a system that that lets you do availability, performance, security, DDoS, on top of one platform that, yeah. All right, and we don't promise to do all that, but that's sort of the vision. And it's interesting because as a startup, we need to have sort of focus, but also keep some of the vision. So major options, have you used NFDump, PM account, any of you guys? Silk, they don't cluster. They run on one machine. We talk to some big networks that do 1 in 300,000 sampling and 2 terabyte RAM machines, and they run their backbone that way. They each have their own CLI. I know, unfortunately, all of them. Some of them, like PM account, is used in front of Elk for people trying to build their own. And that plus anyone ever Googled NetFlow and you see SolarWinds, Manage Engine, Plixer, stuff like that. A lot of our customers, when they get to the stage 1, which is install a Windows VM, or add MySQL to store your flow, that doesn't compute. And then do it yourself has been sort of tricky. In 2013, when we started, a lot of people were playing with Hadoop and MapReduce. That performance is not, there. Our backend looks a lot like Redshift, but a little bit faster and more multi-tenant. It's like Google's Dremel. I was at Akamai. We had an operational system called Query. It's sort of designed to be like that. Now we see most people playing with Spark, but they can't afford to do all in RAM with this stuff. Or streaming analytics, but then you don't have the detail. Or Elastic is the main one that we see for people trying to do their own, and then turns network admins into sysadmins. So what we decided to do was make a platform for traffic analysis. So the kind of companies, again, we deal with today are people that know the traffic drives revenue or is related. Both kinds of gaming companies. We have companies that do gambling outside the US, and we have companies that do gaming, and are even concerned with things like fraud and who's trying to knock each other. Well, we all know IRC and ancient source of the true source of DDoS attacks, right? But it's actually analytics on top of the traffic. So we decided, let's make a platform, let's unify a schema, which I'll show you, to take data from, be agnostic as to where we get the data from. Try to work with the vendors to get as rich data as we can, but 90% of our customers just use MXs, ASRs, Brocades, just send us data right from it. I'll tell you, we sometimes take data directly over the internet. We actually try for SFlow, which actually has bytes of some of the protocol data to not do that. We have an encrypting proxy, and then about 10 of our customers peer with us at Econex because why not? We keep all the data. So this is the big thing. Has anyone used Arbor, in your life? So, you have to create a managed object to be able to start memorizing on data. So basically, you've got no history into the past. Did any of you guys see Boundary when they were out there doing NetFlow from servers?
Yeah.
They were very focused on AWS, and ultimately, we try to focus only on people that are hybrid or run their own infrastructure. Because you can see all the actionable data you want about AWS, but they don't care. Like, there's nothing they're going to do. You're not going to convince them to change the networking.
Right.
So, but then with Boundary 2, which is very cool for its time, you could ask it a question, but it was streaming. It could only show you into the future. And I'll show you when we use the system. We store all the raw data and then try to make it fast for aggregates, but keep the raw data there. So we don't have a time series database like you think of Graphite or anything like that. We want to play with those. I'll show you we have a Grafana integration that we paid them to actually do to pull from our data engine to put that stuff in with your metrics, because we think a lot of the people that run apps and servers need the network visibility and just don't have it. And we don't want to be closed. So we have some network nerd UI specific stuff with BGP that not everyone understands, and designed to make it very easy to integrate. I'll show you some of those integrations. The pipeline makes the data available in seconds. We actually store the last few minutes of data in RAM, because a lot of the use case is DDoS detection, and we know people are pounding the system, but then store it columnar in disk. And we very explicitly want everyone in an enterprise to use it. So, things like single sign-on and things like that, is things that we're rolling out, because when someone says, I want 300 users to use the system, we're like, yes, awesome. And the companies we're working with now, generally, it's not they want to sweep a network problem under the rug. It's they know there usually isn't one, but they're happy to give the complete visibility to the app owners. They just don't have a tool that can do that. So we knew that going in. Anomaly detection, I'll tell you, we don't say cyber, machine learning, big data, I don't know, what are the other buzzwords. Our first alerting system is threshold-based. We have a baselining one coming out, and I'll show you that. The back end, we take data, we have a portal, an alerting system I'll show you. We have 2 APIs. There's a RESTful API, and there's a Postgres API. So the actual back end is like Redshift. It's Postgres, but then a separate system, and that's designed for scripting. I apologize. I'm a Perl guy. I know I'm supposed to do Python. I follow all that stuff. But I'm old enough that I think whitespace as syntax is Fortran and TCL, and I don't like that. So
do you have any Python clients or clients that exist, SDKs pre-built to interface with the API?
We have some PHP. Good a lot. PHP and Perl, I apologize, the other Ps. Reference portals, some reference libraries that we give people.
Yeah.
We haven't done Python in particular just because some of our customers have.
Yeah.
So I'll show you the API. It's actually really easy with curl, any curl and libcurl or whatever, to just call and get graphs, get details. We could probably, if we have time at the end, write one in a few minutes. It's pretty easy.
Cool.
So your API, you said it's a RESTful API. Is it JSON?
Yeah.
But
It's JSON. It's JSON, right? So there's actually two APIs. One, you can make a RESTful call with a SQL query in it and get rows out. We have some people that do that because our main RESTful API, which is JSON, sort of in and out, we don't support everything you could do in a SQL query, right? So someone wanted to do an integration, I'll show you, that we did with a map view, and we didn't quite do the geo grouping the way they wanted, so they just used our older API. Yeah. And you can also do PSQL directly, and I'll show you that too. So the kinds of people that we work with, that we reach out to, these are our referenceable customers. If we turn the camera off and did a friend DA, we can tell you about some other folks in the community. But Yelp, Box, OpenDNS, the concerned about DDoS on their DNS service. Actually, now UltraDNS uses us also. Newstar uses us to help run their DDoS mitigation, but it's people that are either CDN customers, so they really care about the performance and availability, or people that run big backbones and they care about customer cost. And actually, sometimes the service providers are pushing us more towards security because they want to use it as a tease for their managed security offerings. The large enterprise have NetFlow RFPs, not for what you guys may think of, but for just forensics, and we're designed for that, but that's not primarily the way we sell. So,
question on the APIs again. Actually, is it bi-directional? Could you alert us if there's something, an event of some sort, and make an inbound?
Yeah, I'll show you the alerting system, but we can make an API call, and right now we're doing integrations with A10 and Radware. We have customers that are doing integrations actually with A10 and F5 on the pushing. We have some customers that have done their own to push to OpenFlow or FlowSpec to say, okay, I've got a performance problem, let me change a route. Generally, a lot of our customers want what we call the big red button, meaning they want our API basically causes them to get a ticket with a URL that they can push into mitigation. They don't want the Skynet automated management system, SAMS.
One day.
Yeah, one day. Just get in your Uber and push your button. Get in your Tesla Uber, and the world will be fine.
Yeah.
And syslog and email, and we have some other ways too. So I won't dwell on this. The back end is a hard thing for us, actually, because we solved this first. Getting the UI so it's usable by practitioners, and also has what we affectionately call boss reports, the pie charts and text and stuff like that, has been a further feature journey. And just basically, we needed to keep the data. We knew at the beginning from the frustrations of people that they wanted to have access to all of it, but have it be fast for doing aggregates. And as you see, when I do the demo, we can do that. One thing I'll show you very quickly, just to get, because we are in a nerd audience. If you can imagine how we store it. Yeah, make this full screen again. How we store it is actually on Linux nodes, statelessly net booted, running Docker with local file system, ZFS, and it's just columns in a file system. So we can take anything that's IPFix, anything that's a different format, and actually map it. And then as I'll show you in the system, those become columns in the logical tables that are available in the API or in the system. So we knew we wanted to be very flexible, and actually, in some ways, if I look forward 2 or 3 years for us as a company, it's a harder problem. How do we talk about what we do and message it to business people than it is actually building some of the functionality that we need to build, which is why we stay with the Nanog crowd for now, for most of our customers. So just data sources very briefly. 90% of our data comes directly from routers and switches or through a proxy. Most of our customers are not doing this augment because they just need the base visibility. Generally, we start at the outside of someone's network at the border, and then go into the data center, sometimes the WAN, sometimes the branch. We haven't built a lot of the data center functionality with heat maps and other stuff. We have that data. People use us to find bottlenecks in the clause architecture, but we've got some visibility coming that will get even better for that. We don't want to be a hardware company, and we've partnered with NTOP, who has PF Ring, and they've got their own sensors. A lot of our customers want us to supply them a box. Or if you want latency and DNS query and certificate name and all that stuff, you just can't get it from the routers. Cisco has AVC that works on the ASRs, but not at 10 gig plus. So we are this summer getting into that where we'll supply someone a box if they want to tap and the sensor. We show them how to not buy a Gigamon and how to just do a NetOptics optical tap and very easily get the data. Or we run on servers, and I'll show you some of that. And today it's KVM and Zen, basically anything that's a bridge, Linux bridge we can listen on, or we can take SFlow and do BPF, which does kernel packet sampling. But we don't have VMware or Hyper-V agents right now, just because, again, we started with the more at-scale companies that are more open sourcey in terms of what they do. Just to give you a sense of scope, we run our infrastructure is not actually our largest deployment. We have an on-prem, which is larger because some of the security guys like to do unsampled flow. I don't know if you guys have ever played with that, but it can get pretty voluminous. But we have many tens of companies, high hundreds of devices. Each customer will often have tens of billions of records per day that we keep. And we try to keep the whole system running. So you can sign up and be online in 15 minutes, and everything you can start seeing a few seconds later. Now, if you've played with NetFlow, you know that just because the system can take it within 3 or 4 seconds doesn't mean you can start seeing visibility. SFlow, you can start seeing really immediately, but NetFlow, the devices are actually accumulating long enough that you really need to look over 30 or 60 seconds, or it looks way too bursty. So we have some real-time functionality, but we only really turn it on if it's from a host agent or SFlow, the second by second. And also, we saw Boundary in the market made a big deal about the 1 second resolution. I think that's interesting from a historic perspective when you're really debugging, but to see up on a knock graph changing every second, I'm not sure. Our customers haven't been able to articulate why that's important. And we would do it if they said that it was. Typically, it's network architects, network operations, director of operations. Sometimes it's a DevOps group that we get into. Sometimes the SOC finds out. We actually, we'll get asked to integrate with Splunk or something like that because they're like, oh, I already have this flow repository, and we keep it for 90 days or longer. Service performance. Have you guys heard of like ExtraHop and Sub1 and some of those guys? So we're not doing page waterfall. We're not doing every app decode. But Nprobe, who we've chosen to partner with, has decoders for VoIP and mobile protocols and all this stuff, which we're going to take in. For the basic functionality of, is it the network or is it the application, latency-wise, that's where we're starting. But a lot of the customers we work with have said they'd like us to do more towards that as a service, sort of like AppNeta, but at scale. And for us, there's some tension between that and the security additional use cases, and that we'll just figure out working with our customers. But we have some of that. More on the carrier side, it's people saying, how much does this customer cost? What's the packet mile? Put what we're doing in their portal so the customers can self-service. So, and generally with the tools group, we're pretty friendly. We basically say, look, we're not threatening what you do. We have APIs. Let's just take those annoying network nerds and give them the tools they need. Generally that is well received. So I've got a bunch of slides on use cases, but I figure I should go into a demo. If you guys have any questions right now, there'd probably be, I know you're asking them, but happy to go do a demo.
Do you do geolocation? How do you do it? I saw some geolocation stuff in there. So
yeah, we do it the same crappy way everyone does. We use MaxMind or, is it MaxMind or the other one? Whatever libgeoip, if apt-get install libgeoip, whatever that takes.
Okay. So you actually consume that data as well?
Yeah, we consume that data. So we do that at ingest.
All right. So could you detect things like exfiltration events? Because that's a huge deal with big databases. And if you could see an exfiltration event on the wire, a large-scale event like that, is that something you can detect, do you think, or is that something you've thought about, or?
Something we're doing and customers are doing, but I'm not comfortable going to CIO and say, I will detect and stop all of your data exfiltration.
Okay. But does your product actually do it, or is it something that's capable of being done by using?
Capable of being done by using it. You won't see a tab of exfiltrate, cattle prod.
That's fine, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And are you working at all with any sort of subscribe pub sub type things like Kafka or anything? Are you integrated with any of that, or how does that play into what you're doing?
So we use a system that's not Kafka, it's like Kafka. And I know you don't have to use JSON over Kafka. You can use beautiful binary formats over Kafka as well. We use Cap and Proto, and we've done with some customers Cap and Proto over Kafka in our format.
Okay.
Right? So we have 2 large customers that if they pull the trigger, then we'll take Kafka as an ingest method, probably, unfortunately, with compressed JSON over Kafka, because that's how they're currently doing it.
That's fine.
Usually
so as a producer.
Us as a consumer,
As
actually.
as a consumer.
Us as a consumer. Now, usually people use Samplicator, which is a UDP replication bus from Google, and they'll have a flow bus, and then they just send to us from that.
Right.
Yeah. So we could, but have not been asked to by enough people to do it, send flow back out. It just hasn't been a thing that customers have asked. So as a producer.